Welcome to The Pestle, reviewing and breaking down movies to look for insights into the movie-making process. Hosted by Slappy Pappy Wayne Wayan. Let's dim the lights and start the show.
Welcome, everybody, to The Pestle. Today's show is brought to you by Lone Pine, the new James Marsden courtroom thriller, now streaming on Tubi. Welcome, everyone, to The Pestle. I am Wes.
And I am Todd.
And we're filmmakers. We make things, and then we talk about movies, about how they made things. And then we try to take those things that we learned about other people making things to help us when we go make things. And then in this feedback loop, eventually we become God. I think that's how that ends. But
I'm pretty sure.
No spoilers here. And so, yeah, it's always an interesting process of creating things on any level, really. And I love how much you have to be vulnerable in the creation process, whether it's writing something or performing for other people. Like it's all scary to one degree or another. We were talking on the show about some voiceover work we've been doing, and I mentioned that I got replaced. Like what I had a character, he was like a main character on this series that we were doing, and they brought in a new actor and they had us kind of go head to head, and that guy won. Like he kicked my ass. And I was telling Todd before the show, I was like, man, you know what? They picked him and they were right. He was better.
And that says a lot that you could actually listen to it and be like, nope, he's better.
He's a better man. And that's okay. But it stung. I don't want to sit here and act like, it didn't affect me. Like I was wrecked. I was like so upset.
Oh no.
Yeah. But like you said, it was good to recognize that someone else is better. And that's a good thing ultimately, to recognize your gaps and say, hey, there's room for improvement. And I already knew there's room for improvement in my voiceover work. It's another thing to have your face rubbed in it. but it's nice to be on that creative edge and feel that vulnerability and to say, you know what, I'm going to now push myself further and see how much more I can grow and be okay with that. Learn to be okay in the sense of I recognize it, not okay in the sense of I don't want to keep going. I think that's the fine line that throughout life, whenever you're younger, whatever you're, 10 or 15, like you get into this phase of life where you think you can be great at everything. And that by some level, you are better than most other people about in something like that thing that you love to do. And you're like, yeah, that guy's okay, but I'm really good. And it's whenever you start maturing that you finally start to say, it's okay that this other person is better than me and I'm never going to be as good as them. That's okay too, because my passion is in this other thing. And then there's another level of maturity that says they're better than me in this other way. Like there's so many lanes and varieties of being great and good and passionate about something, and recognizing where you stand. It doesn't have to be a negative thing. I think you can take it to a negative space where you just suddenly hate yourself, and because you're not as good as Bo Jackson and whatever, because Bo knows everything, and to say that I might as well not even try. You've gone too far off the edge there. Like letting it be encouraging or letting it challenge you to go new places. I think quitting isn't always the best answer. Sometimes it is, like, especially if it's something you just don't love. But if you love it, you don't have to quit just because you aren't where you want to be. And I think that's one of the things I get encouraged about doing the show. Like we did Swingers last week, and I was like, man, the writing, the acting, it's all so good. And yet I could see so much room for improvement, and that encouraged me. Yet, if I was to go watch one of Jon Favreau's other films or Doug Liman's other films, I would be crushed. Like whatever you think about Jumper, a cheesy popcorn movie, it's really well made and it's really well acted, and it's a really strong film in terms of you made a really presentable movie. And personally, I actually really like Jumper, but I just hear so many other people don't like it. I'm not going to champion it as the end all be all. But right now I couldn't go make Jumper. Like, I'm not on that level. And that's okay to recognize that and to try and get better and better and better. I know I couldn't go and make a chef right now, but that's the process of, okay, I could maybe go make a swingers right now, all things being equal. There's a jump between, swingers and Elf, which is only separated by a few years. Like, swingers came out in 96. Jon Favreau went and made Elf in 2000?
Wow.
That's only a few years difference, and that guy had it in him. And so watching these films, taking encouragement, is really fun as a filmmaker, as a creative. I don't know. How do you feel about, I guess, just living on that edge of being an artist, as well as, how we try to incorporate and look at, other people's projects?
Well, I mean, it's hard because you want to always look at things like you're a child. Something that wows you and amazes you and inspires you to do more of that and to be better at what you're doing. But it becomes harder the more that you do it, to then still see people who are so freaking good at what they do and are seemingly so much farther than you are. So it starts to become disheartening, the older you get and the more into it that you are. So I've been trying to, especially of late, I've been trying to look at things more inspiring than inspiring to me, not to be that, but to continue going, like, oh, that's possible. Okay, cool. How could that be possible for me? Or how could I get closer to that? Or how could I do something like that, but more me, instead of it, like, making me feel like shit that I'm not there right now. Musically, for me, musically, it's been fun. I've been trying to listen to new stuff, and as it pertains to cinema, it's been a really good year, I would say. A lot of inspiring stuff that's accessible too. You go look at like The Holdovers. They're like, you don't need CG for that. You know what I mean? Like, when I watch movies and I see a lot of effects or grand stages and stuff, I think there's no way that I could possibly do that or get there. But if I see it's just a story that's told really well, okay, that's accessible. That's doable. That's doable through, a cheap camera and good angles and believable performance. Okay, great. I think anybody could find a way to do that. Now all of a sudden it becomes accessible and it becomes inspiring because I can do that with what I have. So yeah, it's been, I think this year's already been like pretty good year. And I think trying to hold on to that kind of childlike essence of looking at these big budget films and stuff, moving forward.
Dude, I love that. Speaking of childlike wonder, where are we going today, man?
I don't even know. So today we're covering In Bruges. So if you haven't seen this film, please pause this episode and go watch it, because we are going to spoil a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, we'll look at a handful of things. I'm interested to see where this episode goes because I don't really know. But we'll look at a little bit of the directing and cinematography, some of the story and writing, talk about innocence, the ethics of murder, and other such stuff and things and stuff.
And a quick synopsis of the film. After a job gone wrong, hitman Ray and his partner await orders from their ruthless boss in Bruges, Belgium, the last place in the world Ray wants to be. It's written and directed by Martin McDonagh. It's cinematography by Eigil Bryld. It's featuring Colin Farrell as Ray, Brendan Gleeson as Ken, Ralph Fiennes as Harry, Clémence Poésy as Chloe, and Jordan Prentice as Jimmy.
At the same time, as trying to lead a good life, I have to reconcile myself with the fact that, yes, I have killed people. Not many people. Most of them are not very nice people. Apart from one person. Who's that? This fella, Danny Alaban's brother. He's just trying to protect his brother. Like you or I would. Just a lollipop man. He came at me with a bottle. What are you gonna do? Shot him down.
In my book, though, Sorry. Someone comes at you with a bottle. That is a deadly weapon. He's got to take the consequences.
I know that in my heart. I also know that he's just trying to protect his brother, you know?
I know, but a bottle, that can kill you. It's a case of it's you or him. If he come at you with his bare hands, that'd be different. And that wouldn't have been fair.
Well, technically, your bare hands can kill somebody too. They can be deadly weapons too. I mean, what if you knew karate, say?
You said he was a lollipop man.
He was a lollipop man.
What's a lollipop man doing knowing fucking karate?
I'm just saying.
How old was he?
About 50.
What's a 50-year-old lollipop man doing knowing fucking karate? What was he, a Chinese lollipop man? Jesus, Ken. I'm trying to talk about...
I know what you're trying to talk about.
I killed a little boy. You keep bringing up fucking lollipop man.
You didn't mean to kill a little boy.
I know I didn't mean to. But because of the choices I made and the course that I put into action, a little boy isn't here anymore. And he'll never be here again. I mean here in the world, not here in Belgium. Well, he'll never be here in Belgium either, will he? I mean, he might have wanted to come here when he got older. Don't know why. And that's all because of me. He's dead because of me. And I'm trying to get my head around it, but I can't. I will always have killed that little boy. That ain't ever going away. Ever. Unless... maybe I go away.
Don't even think like that.
Man, so this was your first go at In Bruges. Tell me all the thoughts. There's probably one or two.
The first thought, Ray Fiennes. Thank you. Sorry.
Rafe, yeah.
Butchered that. God dang it. It's not my fault. He spells it wrong. Spells his own name wrong. I know who he is. It just,
of course,
you know,
yeah.
I read the words. Okay. I read the prompter.
I'm not a speaker.
It's not like I'm a voice actor or anything. I had no idea what to expect going into this movie at all. I mean, I'd heard of it, but I'd never looked anything up about it, or I had no idea where it was going, except for the warning that you gave me of the little kid, which thank you very much. I skipped over that part. I saw it coming and, you know, was able to skip over. I mean, it was delightfully wonderful. It was so good. And I was watching it the whole time thinking, why is this so good? This is just, and I think it just the way, you know, this had to be one of those films where the director sat down with the actors and said, okay, there's going to be some serious shit we're going to be dealing with. We're dealing with, you know, assassination, death and shooting. You know, a little boy is going to die, you know, like there's going to be drugs and alcohol, and it's, you know, but it's all going to be wrapped up in this air of lightness, right? Where we're going to have funny moments. We're going to have real moments that are like thrown in there that make us chuckle, but it's not a funny movie. So just, you have to play this real, like you're a real person, you know, and you can't take the tension. And so you say something funny, or you're just a normal person. And so you say something that if an onlooker were listening would laugh their ass off, but to you, it's not funny at all. I mean, there was
the lollipop man,
the lollipop man, you know, like they were really pissed at each other. You know, there was like, what are you talking about? Like 50-year-old, what is he doing? No one, you know, to us, that's funny. To them, that's not funny. They're frustrated at each other. So anyway, I thought it was really well acted and all the lines were really well delivered. And it almost like it didn't take itself too seriously in all the seriousness, which I think was really wonderful, because it let us decide as a viewer how serious we wanted to take everything. And then in the end, it lets us decide the fate of Ray, You know, did Ray survive? Did he not survive? He didn't want to die all of a sudden. All of a sudden, he didn't want to die. And now we're sitting here thinking, well, do we want this hitman who killed a little boy to live? I did. I wanted him to live, you know? Now, if this were real life, probably not. I'd probably be okay if he went, but just knowing everything he was going to leave behind and his arc, right? And how broken he was the entirety of the film. I feel like I kind of wanted him to live so he could live with that pain a little bit longer. But then eventually he probably would get over it, or not get over it, but like get past it a little bit in order to kind of like move on. But I don't know. And it doesn't answer that question for me, which is I think we on this show love that, not being given the answers. I think that the girl he met was perfect for him. Chloe was perfect for him. And the way that she reacted to the crazy things that he said was like fantastic. I think that they're both as totally messed up, like completely. Why would he wait for her at her apartment when she goes to take her ex-boyfriend to the hospital? Like,
it isn't her reaction whenever he's really upset that the night's ruined and that she doesn't like him anymore. And she's like, what do you mean a person like me? He's like, you know, a nice person. And she's like, I just almost robbed you. I lied to you. And my ex is here, you know, trying to kill you. And you're calling me a nice, I'm a nice person. Like, to him, she really was a really sweet, nice person. And there's something really interesting going on about perspective in this film, about the way you see yourself versus the way other people see you. I don't know, but sorry, she's a really interesting character, even though she's sprinkled in.
Well, she's necessary. I mean, without her, what does he have to live for? Like, really think about it. I mean, like he can like maybe for us, like, what do we see that he has to live for? We don't see anything, you know, other than Ken giving his life to warn Ray that Harry's there. In the end, there's not really a reason for him to continue on, an outward reason. But adding her to the mix, where not only is she beautiful and we as viewers would want, you know, to be in a relationship with her, but she gets him. She's like him in a lot of ways, and without him even knowing, and she likes him for who he is. He was never dishonest with her, really, even when he wasn't fully telling her that he's like, actually he told her, I kill children, and and she laughed, you know. All of a sudden I knew, I know what she is. She's his reason for being. Okay, got it. And I knew that right away. And I think he knew it right away too. And so now he's got a reason for wanting to live, not just because of that, but also like he was able to, when the little person who got shot, Ray tried to stop Harry from killing himself. I thought that was interesting. Harry just shot him like 4 times, and he's about to shoot himself, and he's trying to tell him, no, this isn't a little boy, but he couldn't get it out. And Harry stopped him and said, no, you know, principles, whatever. And I feel like that was a little bit of redemption for Ray. Also, it was his whole job is to kill people. And now this guy who's trying to kill him is about to kill himself, and he's trying to stop him. He's trying to save a life rather than let a life be taken. Kind of like what Ken did for Ray earlier in the film when he saw that Ray was going to kill himself. And I thought that was a tiny little bit of, I mean, not really redemption, because Harry's a terrible person, but you know what I'm saying? He's trying to save a life. So anyway, I thought there was a lot of layers. It was really beautiful. I thought that it was a nice little moment, funny moment when Harry's trying to get to Ray in the hotel, and that woman wouldn't get out of the way, and they were honoring that the woman wouldn't get out of the way. And they were like, it was almost like they were, like thoughtful assassins, like they just don't want anybody to get in the way, especially a pregnant lady, and they don't want to shoot up her hotel. So, okay, we'll make a deal. I'll jump out the window and you run around. Okay, well, who's going to count? You're going to count? All right, I'll count. Just, it didn't have to be so heavy, and they didn't make it heavy. They made it almost fun and funny, so that when all of the violent stuff happened, like when Ray gets shot multiple times, we're like, oh my gosh, we go through these roller coasters of emotions. That's why I think I like this movie, because of that. It wasn't just serious, even with a few lighthearted moments. It was serious and funny and serious and funny and serious and funny throughout the entirety of it. So I felt like I had no idea what was coming next. I had no idea what I was going to feel, if it was going to be like when he walked over to the little person with the prostitute, and he's just standing next to him, and he pokes him in the head. Like, are you gonna throw your beer on the guy? Or are you gonna, like, what are you doing? Oh no, you're gonna befriend this guy and start giving him drugs. Okay. No idea. Had zero idea. But it turned out to be wonderful in that. So great suggestion to do this one this week.
Dude, I'm so happy. Like,
you tell me what you thought.
God, man, I love this movie so much. I haven't watched it in a while. Like, it's been probably at least 7 or 8 years. I saw this when it came out in theaters. Alamo Drafthouse did a bunch of interesting little promos for it, and I was like, okay, yeah. And I remember this little postcard that was like an advertisement. I don't remember where I got it, but it was floating around our office whenever we were working downtown at the main media. And it was a postcard that had like these 2 eggs on it for some reason. And it was saying in Bruges, and there was like this little question on where the Fouk is Bruges. It's in Fouk in Belgium. And that's always kind of stuck in my head, which really affected advertisement. I was like, okay, yeah, now because that is literally the first question you ask. And if someone says like, yeah, I'm going to Bruges, you're like, where is that? It's in Belgium. And this plays so well. I think you said a lot of it that I had forgotten about. The playfulness between the extreme levels of violence and the comedy and the humor, it does create uncertainty. Like, there's so much lightness that everything really could turn out fine. Whereas without that humor, you already know this is going somewhere bloody. But whenever you mix it so wildly on both extremes, you just don't know. And so wherever you're going is going to be either really, really good or really, really tragic. And obviously it goes into the tragic territory, which feels it's the highest compliment I think you can give a film, is whenever something surprises you and yet it feels like it was always meant to go there. Like, where this movie ends is always where it felt like it was going. I just didn't know it. And that I love the extremes. I love it so much that I am laughing. And again, like you said, it's not that they're trying to be funny. It's just they are so sincere. And Colin Farrell, whenever he did this, was a revelation. Like, he had gone through this kind of bumpy era in his career. And I thought his kind of start of the comeback was in, what was it, Crazy Heart. Like, people really loved his performance in Crazy Heart as this kind of supporting actor. And it was good. But it was just like, he's not there yet. And I think he had a bad run of like publicity, of just being kind of this bad boy persona. And so it was really easy to just not like him and to not want to watch his movies. And then he does in Bruges, where he's acting like a petulant child the entire movie. And it's so sincere and it's so believable. And you hate him so much for what he's saying, but you love him so much for how honest he is and just how he doesn't know that these aren't things you're not supposed to say. Like these are just sincerely the way he feels. Like, you know, don't dwarves kill themselves because they don't want to be dwarves? Like, it's what a terrible, stupid thing to say. And I love that he says it to someone and Jimmy just looks at him like, what the fuck, man? Why would you? And he gets up and he walks away. But before you can hate or love Jimmy too much, Jimmy starts going on about a race war. And you're just like, is anyone okay in this movie? And everyone's just the bottom of the barrel of humanity. And yet it's all endearing. You love Jimmy, even though he's because also whenever you bring it up to him the next day, he's like, oh God, that's the cocaine, man. That's just the cocaine talking. And he's like, that's not me. Please don't think. And I get it. Like, people get drunk, they get high, their mind wanders and they start thinking like these thoughts that they've never said out loud. And it's not until you say it out loud that you realize how dumb it is. And then once you recognize that, you're like, oh, I'm never saying that again. I think, you know, that's a part of maturity and growing up. And this movie is just full of that. And because it's coming out of the mouths of these really, like you said, in real life, these are deplorable people. And it's fascinating to me how much spending time with people you don't like makes it okay to love them anyway, despite who they are and what they say. You still find ways to love them. We still find a way to love Ray. Ray is a murderer. Ken is a murderer. He's been doing it longer than Ray. Many more kills. He killed a lollipop man who did nothing but try to protect his brother. And we feel bad for Ken. We don't feel bad for the lollipop man. Like, that's crazy. Yeah. But that's the effect of spending time with someone and seeing life through their eyes. And I think there's something really interesting going on with this movie about that. Just about how much harder it is to judge someone when you know them. We find Ken's sacrifice at the end really like horrific and beautiful at the same time. And we really didn't want to see Ken die. Everyone in this movie, we really didn't want to see Ken die. He's a murderer. He's a hitman. He gets paid to kill people that he doesn't know, he doesn't care about. That's what Ray says, right? He's confessing to the father, like, I kill people. And he's like, for what? Did he offend you? Like, no, he didn't make me mad. Not for nothing. For money. He's like, oh, who? You. Like, I'm being really calm and chill right now, even though I'm about to kill you. And then he lights him up. Like, that's the life and job of, you know, a hitman, I guess. And all of these guys, and yet we find Harry the least likable of this whole bunch because he wants to kill Ray because Ray killed a kid. Like, on the outside looking in, you might say someone killed a kid and you want to go kill that guy. That's kind of the status quo for society. Like, we talk about, you know, on the grade of sin, I mean, abusing a child is slightly less worse than murdering one, but we certainly want to murder that person all the same. And yet we're talking about a guy who killed a kid and another guy who wants to kill the killer of that kid. And we're like, no, that guy's the bad guy. Like, what? So it's this really interesting game that we're playing as the viewer of God. And I wonder if there's some element of that because there's so much religious iconography throughout the film. And even Harry himself is comparing Ken to Jesus, right? He makes this weird Robert Powell comment. He's like, you're just standing there like Robert Powell, like I'm not going to do anything. And Ken, shot, wounded, looks up like, who is Robert Powell? And he's like, Jesus of Nazareth. He's like, oh. Huh. It's like bleeding out. Like it's just a brilliant film and surprisingly more thoughtful than you would think of. You know, a bunch of hitmen running around Bruges in Belgium. And yeah, I don't know. I think the other element of this that I have been trying to wrestle with the last 24 hours is what is it trying to talk about? And I think it is very much in that area of, first off, I don't think anyone in this film is innocent, right? Like, we kind of start with a hitman who has to kill his own hitman buddy, who's now having a crisis of conscience. Like, can I go through with killing someone? It's like, this is literally what you do. But now because you know this guy, it's hard. And so it comes back into this perspective thing, I think. And there's also like this recurring theme of 7. The kid was, not even 7 years old, right? And this is what Ken is telling Ray. He's like, get lost, and then wait 6-7 years. 7 years is not that long. And his comment back to him is like, it's longer than that boy got, And then Harry is reflecting on his time in Bruges, and Ken is like, when were you in Bruges? He's like, when I was 7. And so there's this element of being a child, being 7, even the Ray himself seems to be a kid. He acts like a kid, like the entire film. He doesn't want to be here. He's not enjoying the sights. He just wants to run around. And even whenever he agrees to do everything Ken wants to do for the day, he's still literally acting like he's shuffling his feet. He's pouting. And I think that's part of why Ken is having a hard time killing Ray, is because he sees Ray as a kid still. He's infantilizing, this grown hitman. But it's because the grown hitman is acting like a kid. So I don't know. There's all this interesting discussion of ethics, the ethics of murder. Who is it okay to kill? Who is it not okay to kill? Even to the point of Ray. Ken says, Ray, you shouldn't kill yourself. And that's like, why not? And then at the same time, Ken himself commits suicide in order to save Ray. He really does play the role of a martyr. He sacrifices himself for what he perceives as the greater good. And this whole conversation, just kind of begs the question of whether or not it's wrong for Ken to try to save Ray, right? Despite what Ray did. And he's an idiot. Like, Ray has gone this entire film offending everyone around him. Everyone he meets, he offends. Even Chloe, like this girl that he's just crazy about. He's just talking about her city. He's like, Bruges is just a crap hole. And she's like, Ray, I grew up here. I'm from here. He's like, well, I'm sorry. Then you grew up in a crap hole. And it's like, he's unapologetic about his views, his thoughts. And therefore we're always getting the most authentic version of Ray, because he's just unconcerned about everyone else. And yet, he's this childlike being. And then Harry going after, or Ken going after Harry. That's an interesting dynamic, because we learned through the whole race war debate that Harry lost his wife. His wife was black. She was killed by a white guy. And we learned through that, and it's very fast. And if you blink, you miss it. But Ray tells us that the person who killed the killer of his wife, of Ken's wife, Harry got her. And so there, you can see why Ken loves Harry so much and is, so reverent for him, because that guy cared so much about justice and integrity that he went after the killer of Ken's wife and got him. Like, there's a lot of dynamic, complex aspects running around through the story, and then like I said, all the religious overtones, comparing Ken to Jesus. The blood of Jesus is this whole comment, like, I'm going to go out there and first thing you do, of course, you're going to go touch the blood of Jesus. And Ray's just like, do I gotta? It's the blood of Jesus. No, you don't gotta do it. Like, what are you talking about? And then at the end, of course, Ray is comparing Bruges to being like eternity in hell. And what makes the whole thing really, really, really funny to me, and probably to everyone else, is how beautiful Bruges is. And then Ray's miserable take on it. It's like, bro, this is unbelievable. It's history, and it's, but what is history but a bunch of stuff that's already happened? Like, well, yeah, that's the definition of history.
That's the point of it.
And it's him being really upset at this really beautiful town, which is a genius wrinkle. If you go to a town and say, hey, can I shoot in your town? Well, what's it about? Well, it's about a guy who really hates it. It's like, you're going to have to sell me a little bit better on that. Like, if we're going to let you use our town. And he's like, well, he's an asshole and he killed a kid. Like, the audience hates him, but secretly the audience loves him. And so it's just, I don't know, man. Is there an ethics of murder whenever, and I think that's the interesting aspect of the film is listening to killers discuss ethics of killing. And then also finding yourself rooting for these murderers is very conflicted. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, that's the point. As like you said earlier, which was try to get like putting things in perspective of the bad guy, or what you would assume to be the bad guy if you didn't know anything about them. That being said, they're still bad guys, and you know, whatever happens to them, they probably deserve it. So like, what was it? Was it Ken? Ken dies a terrible death. Terrible death. I mean, oh my God, the way he splattered on the ground was just brutal. And this is a good opportunity for me to call out one cool thing that I liked about this film. I thought it was shot so brilliantly. They showed you what you needed to see and not any more. Right. I mean, I didn't see the kid, so I can't speak to that, but the Ken scene, they show him hitting the ground. You feel the force. You see the splat, like the way they light that is just fantastic. But then he's still alive. And when Ray is running over to him, we see, I mean, it's a split second, but you see like a 2-shot of them, like from kind of far away. So you can see kind of like the mangled body of Ken just for a split second, but then we're in close, and you don't see any other gore or anything like that. You just see him struggling. And my God, I have never seen someone die so beautifully as Brendan Gleeson in that moment. I think I'm going to die now. Like it, but I don't know. You never actually see his soul leave his body because they cut away, but like you're just wanting him to die. You're longing for him, like, just please. So you're even when they're dying, you're wanting them to be at peace. You know, I know he's been through a lot, so I want him to just go, man. There's no way you're going to be saved. Nobody can save you now. Just please die. And that was just a beautiful edit to not give us gore, to give us violence and intensity, but not gore. Because gore kind of, I really feel like as a human being, it takes you into a place that's kind of hard to come back from. Right. You know, and I don't mean like being shot, you know, I mean like being shot and having like half of your body hanging off or something like that. Like there are moments of that, and they reserve that, you know, when we see the little person, like I forget his name, Jimmy. When we see Jimmy, that's brutal, you know. But I think that's important because it's just a very serious moment, and we have to know that he's gone. We have to know that in order to know why Harry's about to do what he does. But that scene right there was so beautiful. And I knew as soon as I saw the fog, I knew what Ken was going to do. I knew he was going to jump off the ledge. But they add this wrinkle of him dropping the coins, which gets everybody out of the way. It warns everybody that something's coming. And I thought that was also beautiful as well. He was thinking about other people. Like these are not the typical, I guess, hitmen you would imagine that you see in films, where they just don't care about human life at all. These are, this is a job, and I have to do this job, but I don't want anybody else to get hurt. Only the people that I'm paid to kill will I kill. To the point where when I'm killing myself, I don't want anybody else to be impacted of it. And so when he dies, it's so heart-wrenching and brutal. And Colin's portrayal, Ray's portrayal, whenever he sees that it's Ken, is so good. It's so believable. He's so upset, you know? And that could be in a film where there's funny and there's not funny, and there's serious and there's not serious. That could be, you know, difficult to do, but he totally pulls it off. It's just so wonderful.
He does. And they do. Martin McDonagh does an incredible job of making the whole. So we talk about the loaded gun a lot, but the loaded gun is really just a concept of using everything that you insert into your story. The idea comes from Chekhov. Chekhov's gun, I think, is normally what you call it. But the idea is if you see a gun on the wall in Act 1, it has to go off in Act 2. In other words, don't put things in your story that you're not going to use. No excess fabric kind of thing. And he makes sure the coins are set up in Act 1, right? Whenever he's going up to the tower and he pulls out all this money, he needs €5 to go up. And so he starts counting and he's 10 cents short.
Oh, I didn't think of that. Yes.
And so we know he's got coins in his pocket. Like whenever that moment comes, it makes sense. Of course he's got them. And then also we don't waste that little interaction with the guy. And the guy comes out from his booth. He's like, it's closed. And then he throws the money in the guy, Harry's face, and he starts poking him in the head. Like, oh, you're about to find out who Harry is. And he beats on that guy. Like, and to be fair, we kind of wanted him to get beat in the face in the first place. Like, bro, it was 10 cents. Come on. And so it all, ties up really, really nicely. The entire film is just not wasting anything. Even the thing with the bigger people who wanted to go up into the tower, and they went anyways. And then that's why the tower shut down. And that's why there's no one else up there. There's all these little tidy things that you wouldn't expect to pay off, but it's all in like this depth of everything is thought of. Now, I'm sure if you thought long and hard enough, you could come up with some other things where it's like, well, that doesn't make sense. Like, you can't have it all, I guess. But to me, this does. It accounts for virtually everything. The guy, you think Ray is gone. He gets on the train. He's done. And, you heat the Canadian. I heat the Canadian. What are you talking about? You heat, and he's like, and he points like, that's him. Oh man. And now he's back in Bruges again. Like, and it feels earned and it feels logical because it was set up in an earlier scene. Like everything feels completely looped around in a way that doesn't take you out of the film at all. It's genius. And the jump itself, God, amazing build up. The song, that Irish song, just fills all that space. And to your point, I didn't think about it. That song goes away whenever he hits the ground, and there's this empty vacuum that the music leaves. And God, so there's that buildup of the song. It's very sad. It's regretful, and it's letting you know what to expect. Like you can't just suddenly do it, and it feels like it came out of nowhere. Instead, we're going to watch his bloody trail as he's making his way to the ledge. And then we're going to see why he has to do it. It's because he can't see the ground. He can't fire a shot to warn, Ray, or to try to take out Harry. He has to do something. And then, of course, the POV of the ground rushing towards us, right? And then the wide distance shot of Ken hitting the ground and that gruesome bloody splat. The sound effects there are amazing. The practical effects of all the blood. I can't imagine how many times they shot that scene, but that had to wreck everyone on set. Hopefully it's funny. Hopefully you're on set and like, that's hilarious. Because if not, everyone needs a doctor. Like y'all are all struggling. But I've heard a lot of times, and the times I've been on set, there's a kind of comical aspect to, the blood stuff. Whether that's like watching, for me, like I was on set of Friday the 13th, and because I was a stand-in for Jason, I got to see all those kills. And a lot of the time it's just, okay, everyone, take 20. We're going to wrap everything in plastic because blood's about to go everywhere and you can't get it on the camera. And it just becomes like this weird murder scene from Dexter where everything is laminated to prevent blood getting to it. And so hopefully that's where, a lot of those scenes is just like kind of comical. Brendan Gleeson's makeup effects for getting shot in the neck, like that's gory. It's beautiful in the sense of, again, the extremes that this movie plays in. It feels so grounded because everything feels so real. Like him hitting the ground is probably the most realistic version I've ever seen of someone jumping to their death on a film. Even, with the other one, Old Boy, like I can't think of another film that's treated it so viscerally. And playing it to the bone, I think, is the strong suit. And to your question about the kid, that is very gruesome. There's a bullet hole in the kid's head, and they show the hole. Now they don't show it leaving, and there's no big blood splatter, but you see blood kind of leaving the wound a little bit. The kid topples over. Like, it's rough, and I think it's obviously it's intentional. But I think the point of seeing it is a couple-fold. One, it puts us in the same emotional state as Ray. Because it is devastating. You see that and you're like, oh my God. And you just feel the necessity of Ray taking his own life. Like, yeah, I understand why he feels that way, because we're feeling that way. And then the other half of that payoff is in the end, because the way Harry kills Ray is the same way Ray kills the priest, which is, he's getting shot. He's obstructing the view of the person on the other side, right? Background is a big deal whenever you're shooting out, hunting or whatever, is watching your background. Even as a cop and running around the city, background, right, is a big, big thing. And so the way they die is almost identical. And to that effect, Jimmy getting his head halfway torn off is the exact. It's playing into that same idea of height and space, spatial awareness. This kid got shot in the head, therefore Jimmy gets shot in the head. Therefore, Harry can't tell that that's not really a boy, that it's a man. He's just a little person. And therefore, Harry now has to say whether or not his integrity, his honor, his ethics are intact. And he does. And yeah, I don't know. It's really wonderfully told, as brutal as it is. And I adore it. I mostly adore it for Colin Farrell's performance. He's just so good. And the dynamic between him and Brendan Gleeson is incredible. And the comedy that Ray Fiennes inserts is just a cherry on top. Like, those three people playing together in the same sandbox is one of the joys that I've ever seen in a film. And
agreed.
Anytime you can get those three together again, I'm on board. And to that end, I certainly have a recommendation that will do that. But yeah, I forget, there was somewhere else I was going to go. Real quickly, cinematography wise, widescreen is a great choice. Lots to see because of the location. And then it gives it that dramatic feel. I think if you were to make this more boxy, it takes away some of the drama. And here you want that drama, because you're leaning into the drama, not into the comedy. You go more boxy. I think we start leaning more into the comedy. I also love the close-ups, in this film, cropping off people's heads, which I suppose you could play into the story. But to me, it's just to get a better read on their emotions. It's playing into the drama. If you go wider and you're not doing that, it feels more comedic in tone and safer. Whereas if you go in, you're reading their emotions. The comedy punches a little bit harder because of the drama of it, the sincerity of everyone, and allows you to really engage with the world. And I loved your point, man. You really only see what you have to see. I hadn't thought about, I had thought about it in certain aspects, but not in terms of as a philosophy of editing and shooting. Like, it really was that way. Whenever they're in when Ray and Chloe, and her ex, the one-eyed guy, he's been blinded, and we don't see him leave. We can kind of hear it just based on his audio. But whenever that scene plays out, she gets ready to leave and she's about to go downstairs. We never saw that guy exit. We didn't even see him cross the camera. We just focused on Ray and Chloe's relationship in that moment. And then when the scene ends, you suddenly realize that, oh, at some point that guy went downstairs. It wasn't really necessary. That's a tempting thing to show for continuity's sake. But it's such a good decision to let us live in their emotional space and their relationship. Because they only show us what we need to see. That's a great observation.
Yeah.
Man. And absolutely right.
Yeah. And I also, this is a great example of like camera placement during conversations, I feel like. So like, for example, and you know this, you're a cinematographer, but if you have two people who are having a serious conversation, you don't want to have like a dirty over the shoulder shot. You want to be between them, right? And that's what they did. So when he was on a date, for example, with Chloe, the camera will show him will be between the two, and it'll cut back and forth. Now we're looking at her response. Now we're looking at his response, but it's clean. It's just him. It's just her. And then we'll have a side shot. So we saw the Canadian and say his stupid thing or whatever. But for the most part, we don't have like a dirty over the shoulder because we want to be part of that conversation. Same thing when in the clip that you showed, when Ken and Ray are talking, right? It's a 2 shot because they're just talking, back and forth. And he's saying, oh, this guy is a lollipop man, whatever. And then that triggers something with Ken. And we go in and we have a clean shot of Ken and his reaction. And then a clean shot of Ray, and then a clean shot of Ken. And it gets almost like kind of closer, but not really super closer. It's more about just being only focused on this one person, and you're between the two people. So it seems like you're part of that conversation as opposed to a 2 shot. And they do that a lot, like throughout. If somebody does not need to be part of the shot, they are not part of the shot. If we want to focus on one person and their response because it's serious, we go into that one person and we don't let anybody else invade the frame. And it's really super effective. And this is a great example throughout of that. There's plenty of other examples where you have a 2 shot where it's like useful. So when they're in the hotel and Ray comes home after getting Chloe's number, he's like annoying Ken because Ken is trying to sleep. Ken's in bed, but he comes down and he sits on the bed or something. Maybe it was a different scene. I don't remember, but he sits on the bed and you can see Ray or Ken in bed behind him. And he's taken off his shoes and stuff like it. There are moments where they pick having 2 people in the shot, a 2 shot, because it's light, and we want to almost be voyeuristic, to see the conversation and the reactions between the two. But when it gets serious, it doesn't matter how Ken is reacting to what Ray is saying. If we want to pay attention to Ray and we want to react to Ray, if we see Ken reacting to Ray, then our reaction is based off of Ken's reaction. Instead, we go in and we see Ray say this thing that he says, and we have our own reaction. It's like reading a book, and the book doesn't tell you how to feel. You just feel how you feel after reading it as you read it. Just a great example of that. And I don't really notice that in a lot of movies. And honestly, I didn't notice that until we started dissecting this. And I was thinking, you know what? Yeah, like they really use the camera placement a lot, like really well. So
yeah. And just to add on to that, like even whenever Ken goes to see Yuri to pick up the gun, they start in the 2 shot and they push into coverage so that it starts dirty. And it's a really nice wide shot as we start pushing in to show the gun on the table and the 2 characters. And we just keep slowly closing in that distance until we're in a dirty over the shoulder on Ken, with Yuri kind of blocking a little bit. And then we immediately move into clean singles so that we can really just focus on these 2 guys. That's a great setup, move that allows you to get into the coverage that you want. And even as they move in further into that coverage, it starts with a shot of the gun being picked up, and then we tilt up, and now we can start cutting in reverse cutting. It's very, very clean directing, from a cinematography standpoint. Really well done for someone's first feature. I'm pretty sure this was Martin McDonagh's first feature film, which is outrageous.
So when it comes to shots like that, when it comes to like planning things like that, how much does the cinematographer have to do with making those decisions, and how much does the director have to, I mean, do they, I know it's probably a relationship kind of thing and depends on the relationship, but I would imagine being a director, you want to be able to rely on your cinematographer for certain things. But in the end, I know that buck stops with you as a director.
Yeah, it does depend. I think ideally, it is a relationship. And it's one where the director sits down and shot lists and says, here's what the scene is. Here's, what the important parts are. And they start working through their own shot list. Like, oh, I'd really like a wide shot here and some clean singles here. I want a close up of the gun being picked up. And even better is if, the director can say, I want that push, that wide can push into a dirty single, can cut to the gun being picked up. But if not, the cinematographer can come in and say that and say, oh, you want this wide and you want these singles, you want an insert. Here's how we can incorporate all of these seamlessly. That makes a very smooth viewing experience and a very smooth editing experience. And that way you're controlling your edit from the start in a way that feels all connected and tethered. Now, that's not how it always goes. Some directors just don't care or just don't know. They're so much more focused on the writing and the performances that they don't really know how to do the cinematography thing. It's kind of mumbo jumbo magic to them. And so they just rely on their cinematographer to make a lot of those decisions. And then sometimes the inverse is true. Probably less in feature films. But sometimes you have cinematographers who they don't know how to tell the story through the shots. They are more, they understand the gear, they understand how to give you what you want. And they can help you with all of that. Oh, you want to lit it with this feeling or this tone. Nice. They can do a bunch of other things, but they may not have the narrative sensibilities on how to drive the narrative through the camera work. And then to that end, maybe your cam op can come in with some suggestions. But normally I think, and this is where I start to get a little fuzzy because I'm used to either cam opping myself or my DP will cam op. And for me, the perfect blend is I have a DP and then I cam op. And usually in all those cases, it's really great to just have, focus puller so you can take off some of the load and really get some nice precise stuff so you can make your day and move on and also not waste performances. But yeah, I think in the ideal situation, your director is writing the shot list and cinematographer is kind of checking your work, not in the sense of I'm judging you, but I'm saying that they come in and see what you're doing and say, I know what you're going for. Here's how we can do that better. I think that's just the magic is whenever you come in with an idea, a visual idea, and they say, I'm with you. And yes, and they're yes anding you. And that's where you really get like compound interest, right? Where stuff really starts to skyrocket and you have a partner now. I can imagine it's like that in music. There's times where you've come in with a song, you're like, I want a guitar solo here. Man, I'm hearing this sound. And then your guitar player comes in and is like, oh, yeah. Hold on. I got something for that. And that's just, you can't lose, right? You can't lose. Yeah. I think that's the cool stuff.
Yeah. Even when you say that, I like get this feeling of like, I don't know, I get a feeling of yes. Because it feels like when those moments happen, not only does somebody else get you, but they like it and they want to make it as good as possible. And you're getting the best out of them because they want to give you the best. That's a feeling that it cannot be bought. I mean, it just cannot, having people on your set or in a studio that really like what's being worked on or created and want to give their very best to make it as good as it possibly can be. And to the point of putting themselves out there, making a suggestion, especially if they're, just like a hired gun,
Yeah. So. There's no substitute for passion. Like when someone brings their heart into it, like you're going to get so much more than someone who just has technical know-how. Now, ideally in that situation, you bring the passion and then use their technical know-how. But the synergy that pops out whenever you're both just really invested, man, you can't beat it. You can't beat it. And it's hard to come by, you know? And so creatives out there, whenever you find that, you know, cross point in someone else, like hang on to them. Like you deal with the BS that comes with any working collaborative relationship, because you just don't find that everywhere. Yeah.
Great point.
Yeah, man. So that's all I got. Any final thoughts?
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? My final comment. Sorry, I'm gonna jump right back in. The long take. I love this long take on the phone. Whenever Ken is on the phone with Harry.
Yes.
It starts off really well because, you know, Ken is trying to cover for Ray because Ray's not there. And he's like, is Ray there? And he's like, yeah, he's in the bathroom. Can you send him away? He's like, crap. Yeah, no problem. Hey, he has this whole pretend conversation where he sends him off to you know, go look for bowling alley. And then he's like, is he gone? Yeah, he's gone. I think he's still there. He's like, can you go check the hallway?
Can you check?
Pretends to check the hallway. He's like, God, if Ray had actually been here, that would have been better. Or if I'd said he was gone. But it's all one take. That whole scene is one long take, and allows you, one, again, to play into the humor. Like, this is funny. And he's making up all this stuff. He lays down and puts his head on the pillow. He talks about how if it was a dream, you know, but even though he's still awake, he's like, oh, that's nice. Is that what he said? And it's just like this, you know, two teenagers in love on the phone. It's got this really weird vibe that suddenly turns sour. He's like, he wasn't a bad kid, was he? He's like, he's now talking to him about him in the past tense, and you feel the gravity shift. And it just, long takes are so good if you want to stay in the headspace of an actor and allow their expressions and their tones to be read, because it's mostly in a lot of close-ups. I mean, he walks in and out of the frame to give you a lot of dynamic stuff happening. So there's visual interest galore, but just lingering and letting the scene and the pacing of the scene play out. Performances really can sing that way. They can really just tell you and communicate so much more than if you're just cutting around the whole time. And so whenever those moments make sense, because he's not afraid to cut. There's a ton of emotional scenes that allow you to cut in and out, but allowing us to really spend that time and space with Ken through this long take is just brilliant, because Brendan Gleeson is one of the greatest to ever do it. And if someone's going to give you a lot, and the fact that he gave him this clean shaven look, you can really read his face and his emotions so well. Great directing.
Yeah, great point. And the camera does a 360. Yeah. There is no 180 rule there.
Not at all.
Because he walks around, right?
He's walking
so
all
great.
over the place. God, it's
They're
good.
breaking all the rules.
All the rules, man. And when you know what the rules are, and you know when you can break them, and it's just, God, it's good. It's good stuff, man. It's not fair. I mean, I think he was in his mid to late 30s when he made this, but to me, I mean, this is brilliant writing. Yeah. So that is my official last thought.
Love it. Absolutely. Nice. I don't have anything else to add.
Well done.
I just really enjoyed it. I'd never seen a film do what it did to me in terms of unexpected emotion, you know? So it was just really, really powerful. Yeah.
God. Yeah. The way that they can just move from joke to heartbreak within a sentence
in a second.
Yeah. What? Unbelievable. Just the peak of writing and acting. Like, it's just unreal. Nice. What are you going to recommend this week?
Yeah, so this week I finally drug myself in to see Poor Things, so I'm going to recommend Poor Things this week. After the Oscars, I was very proud of. I'm so bad with names.
Emma Stone.
What's her? Emma Stone. Yes, thank you. I'm very proud of Emma Stone for winning. I think it's very deserved for this film. She killed it, and unbelievable. Unbelievable movie. I mean, don't watch it with the family. It's not a family movie, but it is definitely a brilliantly like the set decoration is amazing. The wardrobe is incredible. Her acting is otherworldly. I've never seen any character quite like this, and her arc is just, yeah, it's just beautiful. So Poor Things.
Beautiful. That, I assume that production designer won everything in that category because
she should have.
Oh my God.
I don't know.
Dude, great recommendation. And yeah, I love Yorgos just for, he's doing his own thing, man. Whenever he writes something, now I think that's adapted from a novel, but choosing that and how you adapt it, like, God, great recommendation. I am also going to recommend something recent. If you enjoyed Colin Farrell and Brendan Gleeson and this crazy swing of emotions, then you should see Martin McDonagh's other film where he pairs them up, the Banshees of Inisherin. And that has the same level of like, oh my God, and absolute stunning humor. It's just brilliant writing. Yeah. And if you're enjoying the show, don't forget, subscribe, drop us a review, leave us a note. And stay tuned for next week. We are going to be looking at, oh my God, it's Jason Bourne. It's The Bourne Identity. Yeah. And if you want to comment on this episode in particular, you can do that at thepestlepodcast.com/inbruges.
And our quote of the day today is from Oscar Wilde. The only difference between the saint and the sinner is that every saint has a past and every sinner has a future.
That's good, man.
I'm not gonna add anything to that. It's just beautiful.
It is, like, Oscar Wilde. So there's a number of reasons. Obviously, the quote is very apropos of discussing like sin and forgiveness and looking for, I don't know, absolution or a way out. I love Ray's comment about, I will always have killed that boy. That is true. That is his past. It doesn't have to, dictate his entire, future. And it probably should, but it doesn't mean that he can't find redemption some way. If he takes his own life now, he doesn't ever get to make anything good in the world happen. And so if he wants a future, it's there if he can find a way through. And I love Ken for trying to find that for him. But the other reason I picked that quote, of course, is it's Oscar Wilde. And thinking about this movie, I'm assuming Martin McDonagh's Irish. I'm pretty sure he is. But Ireland has just an incredible history of some of the best writers. I mean, Oscar Wilde, James Joyce, Bram Stoker, George Bernard Shaw, Jonathan Swift. And I feel like if film weren't so popular and Martin McDonagh was born in a different era, we would be saying Martin McDonagh like as another great Irish writer. And I think it's both amazing and tragic that we don't regard, screenwriters in the same breath that we regard writers of history. Like, we're never going to talk about whatever Jonathan Nolan in the same way, we talk about, whoever, Oscar Wilde. Like, it's tragic, and it's also like, and maybe someday we will. I don't know. Who knows? Maybe film finally dies the way everyone's been predicting for the last 20 years. And then we start talking about just the incredible writing, and screenplays take on this whole other thing. But it is amazing just how talented you have to be to write something like this. I mean, even whatever, Tennessee Williams, like, we still, even playwrights get more praise than screenwriters do. We don't think about the incredible level of talent that goes into writing a movie because of the popcorn aspect of it. And we just don't take it serious because plays are always really, really thoughtful. Whereas movies can be thoughtful, but so often they're also Indiana Jones, where it's just, bang, bang, shoot 'em up, lassos or whatever. Like, we just don't have that same breadth of respect, which is a shame. And I don't know. I think if anyone deserves it, this guy certainly does. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Couldn't agree more. I mean, I think that streaming has a lot to do with it. It's the same with music. The moment that things are free is the moment they have no value. And when you just when you start making content and stop making films, it like ruins everything. That's a soapbox I don't need to get on, but that, I mean, if you think about it, it's something, it's just something to think about, you know. It used to be a thing. It was a thing to get out and go to a Blockbuster and rent a movie if they had it. Hopefully they had it. I'm not saying that we need to go back to those things. You know, I have a Netflix account, you know, I'm not speaking against it necessarily. I am just calling a spade when things are easily accessible. It's easy to forget how hard they are to make, right? It's easy to forget how hard it is, like you just said, to write something like this, a screenplay like this, and then to get millions of dollars together, and then to get on the right location, to get the right actors, to get the right crew, you know, to have the right crafty, you know, to have the right wardrobe, the right special effects. It takes thousands of people, thousands of decisions to make something that's this good. And it takes 5 bad ones to make it bad.
That's true. That's true.
Really, it's such the difference of these little tiny things. Yeah. So anyway, I totally get it. And this quote is really beautiful because it just shows you that nobody is who they have been or who they are, and there's no way to know who they're going to be. You know, just because I'm good now doesn't mean I didn't do something bad in the past, and just because I did something bad in the past doesn't mean that my future is always going to be determined by that. Like you said, maybe in some cases it should be, but that's not always the case. And so I like that, seeing this this side of the bad guys, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
you know? Totally agree. Yeah,
nice.
Well, wonderful. I really enjoyed this. Great recommendation. I had a great time watching it. And an even better time talking about it. Yes, you did it. You did it. Oh man, sweet. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Hopefully you learned something, or at least enjoyed our conversation. Please subscribe, review us wherever you get your podcasts. Share us with your friends. If there's a film that you'd like to see us pick apart, please share it. Who knows? Maybe we'll cover it one day. Until next time, I'm Todd.
I'm Wes.
Go watch some movies. What are you doing? What is that? I don't get it. Oh yeah.